Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another edition of Drive Time here on this lovely Monday, May 12th. Happy belated Mother's Day to any mothers out there that will be watching or listening as we move on through the show. And here we are. It's May in Ohio. We actually got the windows are open. It's kind of the nice time of year here where you just have the windows open for a little bit and not have to worry about any of that heat that comes down in the South Carolina area. But of course, we always start with what am I wearing? And of course, today being game four, we'll get into the series obviously a little bit later on when we get into our drive to the net segment, but we have to go with the Carolina Hurricanes and in a big game four tonight with the Washington Capitals. The Canes are up in the series 2-1, but we'll save some of that for a little bit later on here, obviously, of course, when we dive into that here. So next up here, if I can get it to come up here correctly, which is always the fun part, is of course the time for a little look here into the rear view mirror, and we always are going to start with our "Oh Say Can You Sing." Not really too much to add new here, but we did have a couple that moved a little bit higher score. Remember when I said here the rules of this was going to be that if you had whatever your score was, that if you had an improvement in that score, you could move up, and that did happen for Caleb Green and Bob McDonald. Their original score was 45, which is pretty good. I mean, pretty much almost nines all the way around, but a little bit different as far as they got to it. I really liked when they did their one for game one, and they got a point higher, and one of the ones they went from on pitch from a 9 to a 10, so they're up to now a 46. So this one will go bye-bye live, and now their new score is a 46. For Natalie Morse for Toronto, she's been doing the anthem there. Separate thing, there's a cool little TikTok. She was on a Toronto subway, and everyone sang her the national anthem. If you can find that, that's a pretty cool thing to watch. Really neat. Toronto just is such a great city. But that's another whole thing. So here we go with that one. Her only had the O Canada on 420, which was a 37. Got a couple more points in pitch and range. So she goes from a 37 to 39. And then her US is a totally new score. So that's really it as far as the movement goes. Didn't have any new ones to go on to. And so right now we're still looking at Carnell Johnson at the top of the 50, Robert Carter second at 47, who did the men's basketball championship. And then you can see the list from there. So that's really it for Jose Can You Sing for this point in time. So we'll see if maybe if the NBA will hopefully start maybe showing some anthems, we can maybe get some more anthems added into that. But for now, that is it that we have there on that one. The big news, of course, I want to talk about from last week is Derek Carr announced his retirement from the NFL. 11-year NFL career. He's only 34. He had the bad shoulder injury that was talked about that could have likely had surgery, which he would have been out for all 2025. But the damage was so far done that it looks like likely, even if he had the surgery, that more than likely may not have even been able still to come back. So I think he decided what's best for him is to just not have the surgery, not worry about that part of it, and just be done playing football. 11-year career. 9 of it was with the Raiders, the last 2 with the Saints. Of course, I'm going to focus mostly on those 9 years with the Raiders, which was my team, unfortunately for him. He had a lot of injuries throughout the time, which didn't help him either. Never had a good offense to work with, went through a lot of offensive coordinators. Unfortunately, didn't win a playoff game. His best chance at it was back in 2016. They went 13-3 that year, but he breaks his leg in the last game against Indianapolis, and then I can't even remember who they started at quarterback that game against Houston. I just remember it was god awful. And from there, unfortunately, the next year under Jack Del Rio, things fell back. Boy wonder, which is what I always call Mark Davis, who then had control of the team. Didn't like just having a coach that wasn't anything flashy about him. So of course he fires Jack Del Rio, brings back Gruden. Gruden's personnel decisions, to say the least, were not the greatest. He then, of course, has his own little doings going on where he gets released in the 2021 season. Derek Carr does lead under Rick Bonifaci to a nice little comeback, and they make the playoffs against Cincy. They don't win, and then Derek, they bring in Super Genius, who failed miserably, of course, as well, but had the first year with Derek Carr, and those two they probably weren't a good fit anyway. And Super Genius had his heart set on bringing in Jimmy G to be the next Raider quarterback, and we all know that failed miserably as well for him. So Out went Carr to New Orleans, where he had two okay seasons, nothing great, but again, same thing. Injuries just leads him down the road to this path, and that's he took a lot of hits in a Raider uniform. He wasn't always one thing for sure. Was Derek Carr the greatest quarterback ever? No. Was he a bad quarterback? No. Did he ever have a lot of good teams with him to help him? No. Did he ever have a good offensive line to really help him? No. Did he take a lot of unnecessary hits trying to make plays? Yes. So I've got nothing but love for Derek Carr. I think right now he's still technically under contract, New Orleans, but I would hope at some point in time they can figure out a way to bring Derek Carr back for the old one-day contract so he can retire as a Raider. I think a lot of Raider Nation would definitely like to see that. Overall, 41,245 yards passing, 257 touchdowns, 112 interceptions, 77 and 92 regular season record. And those are kind of the stats on the for Carr. Like I said, it's kind of sad to see that happen to him. I was actually really hoping for him to do well in New Orleans. I would have loved it to be a big FU to Boy Wonder and the Raider brass, who decided that he wasn't good enough, for them at that point in time. Nothing against where the Raiders are at now with Geno Smith. I think that hopefully it's a move that works out well for them. But going back 2-3 years ago, I wanted to see Carr have a lot of success in New Orleans, just to stick it to the brass there. But that's unfortunately not going to happen for him. So the question now is going to be what happens in New Orleans. Their quarterback room is currently filled with Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner, and then of course their second-round draft pick Tyler Show from Louisville. So I don't know what you do if you're New Orleans. Do they make the horrible decision and go after Aaron Rodgers and bring him into there? That's going to be something for them to really have to think about and look at. I hope for their sake that their answer is no on that front. But you might be tempted when that's your quarterback room. That's probably what Rodgers was waiting for, is for one of these quarterback rooms to get devastated by an injury, and see what happens. So we'll see what this means for New Orleans. One little interesting twist to this is if they are terrible this year, which they very well could be. Does that mean that Archie Manning's kid plays for the New Orleans Saints next year, which is something to watch to see where New Orleans finishes, because that would be one interesting twist to all this, is to see Archie Manning playing where Archie Manning, played as well. So could there be a second line of Mannings in New Orleans? So we'll have to stay tuned and see how that all plays out. Next up is we did have some managers that lost their jobs over the course of the last week. The first one that was let go, neither one of these two I would classify as surprises as far as where they're at and where they're no longer at. Pittsburgh fired Derek Shelton after starting this season 12-26. The Pirates, the last couple of years, have actually had good starts and then really faded hard. This year, they just went right to sucking right at the beginning. They promoted Don Kelly, who was their bench coach, to interim manager. Shelton was the manager since 2020. Never had a season above 500 there. He finishes at 306 and 440. Like I said, had some good starts the last 2 years, but fell off quickly. And I think with them then starting this season at 12-26, the writing was probably on the wall for a Pittsburgh team to blame their manager instead of the fact that the owner refuses to bring in any real talent into that team. But the Pittsburgh Pirates will continue to do what the Pittsburgh Pirates do. So he was the first one that was fired. And then yesterday, Colorado fired Bud Black but they did actually win the game, which I thought was weird. They fired him after they won a game. But the Colorado Rockies are a lovely 7-33 to start the season. They're making the Chicago White Sox look good, and that's a pretty hard thing to do. So they hired their third base coach. Warren Schaefler is going to be the new manager for the rest of this year. The day before, of course, Colorado did have that embarrassing 21-0 loss to the Padres. Sorry, there's Gertie's tail. Gertie's the first cat to make an appearance on today's show, so everyone say hi to Gertie. But anyway, with him, he had a little bit longer tenure. He's been hired in Colorado in 2017. He did make the postseason in 2018, but they really haven't been good the last 3 years, and some of that too I think falls on the construction of the roster. But his overall record there was 544 and 690. I think the best quote out of all this was Dave Roberts, when asked about it, said Casey Stengel couldn't change the outcomes in Colorado, and he's probably right. That team is just a disaster for sure. So let's see. Sarah says ew over the 3. I'm not sure which one that's what you're referencing to their showtime, Sarah, but let me know what you're referencing for that, and then I'll clarify that. So U negative U greater than 3, something like that. I don't know. Not sure what she's saying there, but she'll tell me. She'll fill me in on that. So anyway, so that's those were the two managers that so far have been let go. We'll see who's next down the line. Uh, a little bit earlier than what I thought. Minnesota's been playing a little bit better ball, so my prediction of Rocco being the first manager fired um, is not going to happen. It looks like, unfortunately for me, but that would have been a fun prediction. It is a broken heart to Gertie. Ah, that's a broken heart. Okay, yep, good old Gertie. There she is. Everyone loves the Gertie until we always threaten to throw Gertie in a pond. That's a different side note there, but um, we won't be doing that today anyway. So all right, so we have that there to cover. So let's go ahead and dive into some NBA series updates here. We're going to, of course, start with the team that's closest to my heart, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and their utter disgrace that was a basketball game yesterday. They are now down 3-1 to Indiana. The final score last night was 129 to 109. That score did not do justice to the first half killing that Indiana put on Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell now went back for an MRI. I don't think I've seen anything on that I've been looking for yet today on the results of that MRI. So especially if Donovan Mitchell is done for the series, the Cleveland Cavaliers are done for the series. I think that's going to happen anyway. This team just looked like it just quit during the middle of that game. They can't defend the 3 against Indiana. That's been the problem this whole entire series. And it's not looking like that's going to let up anytime soon. So second straight year, the Cavs will be going out in the second round. And this year, after 60 plus wins, there's a lot of buzz in this town for that team. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that roster, assuming that the inevitable happens and Indiana takes that series. Boston, New York. New York is up 2-1. The road team has won all 3 games in the series, which is kind of interesting. Game 4 is tonight. I think the last game, the Celtics kind of looked more like the Celtics, and we'll see if that continues for good old for the sake of the bet between KG and the Gentleman Jack. As you know, the KG won a big fat steak dinner from Cleveland winning 60 games. They doubled down on this series. So right now, KG has still the leading comment of the leading of getting that second steak. But I got a funny feeling Boston's going to start to come up here. Silent Junkies put Nixon 7, so we know that that's KG checking in on that side of it. Which I know I'm rooting for you, KG. I want to see you get 2 steak dinners because I think the question is then when you get 2 steak dinners, do you double down on the same steak place, or do you go for 2 different really good steak places? See, I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go with 2 really good steak places. If I'm getting 2 steak dinners, why just have them at one? I think you got to go. Go for the gusto and go for 2 good ones. He says Cleveland is not the same as they were 2 months ago. I kind of agree with that, and I kind of don't because I think the Miami series they showed the true one, but I'm also kind of think Jared and I were talking about this yesterday. Maybe the Miami series was too easy for them, and maybe they took Indiana lightly. I would have thought after game 1 that wouldn't have been the case, and then even game 2, they're up 20 points and just the other collapse in the fourth quarter. They just could not defend the 3, and they still can't. And yesterday was just guys being left open all over the court. Didn't get it at all. But that's a whole nother steal. Oh boy. Sarah says fried Gertie steak. Now that's just not nice to poor Gertie here. And then KG puts in 2 different ones. Yeah, I think that'd be the way I go too. If I'm getting 2 free steak dinners, I'm going with 2 different places, and I'm going top of the line on both of them. So you got to do a good comparison that way. I think that's good journalism right there, if you ask me. Jack got long money. Hold on, the cat's just hitting buttons. Got long money, so Morton's here we come. Yeah, Morton's is a good one. What's their other one that's up there that's really good? I can't think of the name of it now. I'll try to come up with it here and get it back to you. So I'll help you up there with maybe a couple more good steak places to go to. Out west, OKC and Denver. This series is tied at 2. I think it's probably been the most competitive. It's been other than the game 2 blowout by OKC. These games have been back and forth, going both ways. Their game 5, I think, is tomorrow, if I remember looking at it correctly. It's been a fun series, and this is one that I think I remember, Dylan talking about that. This would be one where I think that he was one of the few ones that thought that Denver could give OKC some fits, and they definitely had. So we can that's going to be fun to watch. Minnesota's up on Golden State 2-1. Their game 4 is tonight. Steph Curry is still out with a hamstring injury. Looks like he's supposed to maybe be able to say maybe game 5. But Golden State's been hanging around tough even without their big guy. I've been pretty impressed that they're keeping it a series. They're keeping the games close. But they definitely got to get the win tonight. Their game is tonight as well. So a lot going on there to keep an eye out. Sarah says KG wants a free cat so bad. Yes, Gertie is available to anyone. She includes gifts and prizes too, because we have a lot of cats here, but we're not supposed to talk about that anymore. So, all right, let's get out of that stuff. Enough talk about Gertie. So, with that, it is time for one of my favorite things to do. Of course, we're going to drive to the net, and we are going to dig deep into some of these playoff starts and get into a little rant that I have where on something that grinds my gears too. But first, let's start with the ladies because it's always ladies first. That's the way that I should look at. So they are in their first round series. Only 4 teams make the playoffs in the ladies' side. Montreal and Ottawa is tied at a game apiece. Ottawa won game 1, 3-2. And then Montreal won the longest game so far in the short PWHL history. They've only had 2 seasons, but their game 2 went to 4 overtimes, and Montreal won that game 3-2. I always love when you get a game that goes to 3 or 4 overtimes, and then you get the goalie stats for the Knights, which are just insane. And Renee Desbens, who is likely going to be the best goalie, win the award for the best goalie for the year. She had 63 saves out of 65 shots. Gwyneth Phillips for Ottawa wasn't too far behind. She stopped 53 out of 56 shots. So my quick math says that is 121 shots on goal during the basically what equates to playing 2 full games and then a partial period. So that is actually the longest game. Even the NHL has not hit triple overtime yet this year. They've had a few games go to double overtime, but no one has yet to hit that. So we'll see how that all goes. Michael Jordan doing NBC is going to be interesting too. Yeah, I saw that. I think it will be. I think that's good for the league. I think. I think the NBC needs to get some buzz going back and in their style, along with, of course, just a great theme song, which is always good to have. Sarah says 4 overtimes is crazy. Yep, I agree. I do love me a good long playoff game. That would have been fun to see, but they're still kind of, you got YouTube TV, I think, has the ladies games if you're ever interested in seeing them. The other series, the defending champs, is the Minnesota Frost. They are up in their series 2-1 on Toronto. Toronto won game 1, 3-2, but then the Frost really found their offense, winning games 2 and games 3, 5-3, and then 7-5. Lee Steckling has 6 points, and Taylor Heiss has 5 points for Minnesota. Basically, the top 4 scorers right now in the playoffs are all Minnesota Frost because they're just lighting the lamp, and the other teams, the only other games only played the 2 games as well. These guys have played 3, but when you've scored 14 goals in those 3 games, you're going to be leading the league in the scoring part of that. So that is on the ladies' side. They should be just about right there. Both of these guys play on Wednesday night and tomorrow night. So by the time we get to next week's show, probably should at least have the final should be just about set. If not, depending, these are only best 3 out of 5. So they should be pretty close to that. Also going on over across the pond, as they like to say, is the World Hockey Championships. This is the yearly IIHF tournament. It's kind of always weird because they always do this tournament. It always starts in May. So these teams will have a mix between AHL players, NHL players. Like, for example, Canada's got Marc-Andre Fleury playing and Sidney Crosby's playing. That's kind of like their last little go round to play together, which I think is very, very cool. Probably also makes Canada the favorites to win it, along with the other guys that they've got on that team. It's a 16-nation tournament. Basically, they put them in the 2 divisions and 2 divisions of 8, and you do a quick round robin. Then after that, the top 4 teams will go against each other. The top team in one division will play the lowest team in the other division. 3 plays 2, 2 plays 3, and then so on and so forth. And those are all single elimination games. So then you get into the overtimes and all that fun. Chechnya won this last year, won the gold medal. The U.S. has not won gold in this event since 1933. Last year, they not medal all, but the 3 years prior to that, they finished 3rd in this tournament. So it's kind of an interesting tournament. It's fun to see the results, to see who's going to do what. So far, the USA is 2-1. They had 2 shutout victories against Denmark and Hungary, 5-0 and 6-0, and then they lost today to Switzerland 3-0. So their games are either shut out the team or they get shut out. There's no in between so far for them. Coming up on their schedule, they have Norway and Germany. Germany or Canada's actually off to a 2-0 start. They won 4-0 against Slovenia, and then a 7-1 win against Latvia. This round robin part will go through till next Tuesday. So when we get to next week's show, most of the teams will have a game left. We'll have a pretty good idea of what teams will make the medal round of it, and go from there. Then next up here we have. Well, I've got comments. So we'll read that before we get going here. Are you talking about the AHL playoffs too? No, no AHL playoffs. There's still like 10 teams, 12 teams left in that one, and their playoff brackets is weird. When they get to the Final Four, I'll probably talk about the AHL playoffs, but we'll wait on that one for there. Let's see. So what we got next here? This happened when we did the show last week. Now we taped it at noon, and I think the news broke right as we were finishing up, and I didn't want to pull it in because I didn't really find a good way to bring it in. Rob Blake was let go in LA. Basically, Rob Blake is him and Gretzky and Luc Robitaille, and if you go way back to Marcel Dion, those are kind of the four greats in LA Kings franchise history. He was the player for them, retired. Then shortly after that, took over as the GM president role. Overall, the teams under him have been good. They've been playoff teams. But when you lose to Edmonton for 4 straight years in that first round, coaches have been let go over the course of these last few years. And sooner or later, the fall is going to come up on the GM. And so that's what happens here. He's a career LA player legend. I think he did a fair job as the GM. It'll be interesting for him to see, does he want another job with a different franchise? Because I think if he does, he would get it. I just don't know if he's ready or wants to leave, that LA market yet. So we'll see what happens with him. I think there would be a lot of want for Rob Blake in a different team, but whether or not that happens or not, I don't know. I don't know if he's ready to leave or not. So we'll see what happens with Rob Blake. But that kind of happened last time. 8 teams now in the AHL. Yeah, I think a couple of the series did finish up last time. But when they get down to 4, we'll go AHL and we'll go East Coast Hockey League. We'll break them all down when they get into their final fours, so to speak, which happens a lot quicker than the NHL playoffs do for sure. This one is going to kind of fall under the grind my gears, and it was the latest hiring, which is Joe Quenneville, hired by the Anaheim Ducks. The reason why this one grinds my gears is just the allegations that were at hand for him. There's no doubt about Joel Quenneville as a coach. He's won a Stanley Cup in Chicago. He was off to a very good start with Florida. He had a good first year there, and then in the second year in Florida, he's 7-0. When these allegations start to hit, and he resigns when they're 7-0 after meeting with Bettman. And this all stimulates back to during the 2010 playoff run. There was a video coach named Brad Aldrich who was accused of sexually and assaulting prospect Kyle Beach. Later did turn out to prove to be accurate as far as that this did actually take place. And Quenneville decided, because they were close to the Stanley Cup Finals, that he didn't want to take any action during the playoff run because he was afraid of the distraction it would cause. Immediately after that season, Aldrich, resigns. He has a meeting with the NHL because this word starts getting out that this took place, and that basically Quenneville decided to do nothing about it. And that was when the NHL took a pretty hard stance in the fact that saying that he could not coach in the league again until he had a meeting with Bettman. That meeting did take place actually way back in July 1st of 2024, where he was cleared to coach again. I was happy to see no one hired him last year. Unfortunately, this year, the Anaheim Ducks couldn't resist, and they have named him their head coach. I don't like it. I think he covered up a pretty significant scandal. I would have been very happy if Joel Quenneville never coached a game again in the NHL. But here we are. This is again what happens when you're a coach and you've won a Stanley Cup. It's sometimes hard for teams to look back on that and be able to do anything good. Let's see here. Boston finger red #1. You have to clue me in, boss man, on what that means, because I'm not sure I'm following. So sorry. So that's the latest there in Anaheim. We'll see what it does. Anaheim says that they did extensive questioning and the surveys and leading up to this hiring. They, of course, had not released any of that information of what their extensive research was on Quenneville before they hired him again. I'd love for them to do that, but of course they probably won't. So we'll see how that all plays out with that. So it was an emoji on YouTube. I don't know why it came up as words. Okay, well there you go. So there you go. Well, now I have to try to do the emoji again so we can see what the emoji is instead of whatever the words were, because that's all that came up here, which is kind of funny. I like it. So, but there we have that part of it, and so we will see how that all goes. So that's that part. It's kind of terrible, bad news. So let's get to the good news. The Utah Hockey Club is now the Utah Mammoth. They have shared their jerseys and everything like that. And so let's pull these up here real quick so everyone can get a nice little look at them. And these, I think they're pretty sharp jerseys. Their road jerseys don't really change too much. They pretty much were going with the Utah that you see here across. Let me see here if I can make this a little bit bigger or not, because that would be swell if I can for everyone, but I don't know if it's going to let me make this picture bigger. I'm trying to click on it here to see. No, it looks like this is as big as I can get it. Oh, that one's really big, but you don't want to see that one. These ones are kind of their secondary logos too. So this is the U that has the tusk going across that, kind of like that. The one with the hockey stick going through the state, which is what you see on the one shoulder. So that's one of them there that I think I like. This was the main what it looks like as far as on their own. That's in the white, and that one, and we got that, and then these are the jerseys again. So I like the black jersey. I think it's or dark blue. I think it's what they're calling it. That's the Utah logo that I just showed you is up here on this one. That's what's up there. So overall, I think the jerseys are pretty sharp looking. I wouldn't mind if I could get my hands on one at some point in time, but jerseys aren't cheap like they used to be anymore. So we'll see if that ever happens. So the Utah Mammoth are now official in the league, and overall, this is they wanted the name Yeti, but Yeti Cooler, for whatever reason, wouldn't release the name. They thought that there was going to be some confusion between the Utah Yeti Hockey Club and Yeti Cooler. I don't know how. I don't know what the confusion could have been, what it would have been, but that's what they thought. So they wouldn't let it go. But now that it says that, I'm okay with that. So let's see here. This is it. #1 medal, gold medal looks like. All right. Well, there we go. Sarah says these jerseys are so cool. Yeah, I agree. I do like them. I think overall the jerseys are pretty nice. Overall, I think Utah did a pretty good job. They couldn't get their team. I like that you got the mountains here in the mammoth head. That's a pretty cool little thing that they're able to do. I was kind of hoping somehow they could have stuck a Yeti into the design as in a sneak way, just to give the Yeti Cooler Company a little fu, but no such luck there. So there it is. The Utah Mammoth are here and born, and we'll see how they go. They had a pretty decent first year in Utah. The crowds were pretty good. Now you start getting some expectations. We'll see how things go from there for that team and the franchise. I hope it goes well for them. I'd like to see them do well there. It's definitely, like I said, I like the jerseys overall. They're pretty good. So I'll give them a solid B as far as those jerseys go. They're we need to see them on the ice before you really know, because it's one thing to see concepts of them, but it's another thing when you get to see them on the ice and what they look like on the ice. So then we'll see that, what they look like once they get out there on the ice. All right. So with that being said, it's time to dive into some of these playoff series here. So let's get to that here. Give me a second here. I'm going to close down some of these windows because I don't need them up anymore, and it just gives me something else to stare at. So we'll start out west again. Dallas leads Winnipeg 2-1. This series has been basically what I thought it would be. Dallas wins game 1, 3-2. Winnipeg gets off to an okay start. Then Mikko Rantanen, who, if Dallas wins the Stanley Cup, will be their clear. He's going to be their clear MVP of the playoffs with the way that he's playing right now, because he just keeps putting up hat tricks and scoring points. So the Moose was loose again in game 1. He scores all 3 goals for Dallas. And their 3-2 win. And again, the talk starts for Winnipeg and Connor Hellebuyck and where he's at and mentally and everything like that. He comes back out with a really good game 2. He has his best game in a 4-0 win. He gets the shutout win. Series is tied at 1. Game 3 was yesterday in Dallas, and Dallas again gets off to a quick start. They scored the first couple of goals. Winnipeg does answer it and tied the game up at 2. And then goal 3 for Dallas is just a weird one. Their player is almost behind the net, and he kicks the puck towards the net. It goes off of Connor Hellebuyck's stick and into the net. Does not touch any other players. There is probably the longest video review that I can recall in an NHL playoff game in quite some time that takes place. They determined that yes, he did kick the puck, but Connor Hallebuck basically put the puck into his own net. Um, there's nothing in here. All that the rule says is that if the player kicks it and it doesn't go off of any other player's stick except for the goalie's, it should not be a good goal, which is what happened in this case. The only stick it went off of is the goalie stick. It does not say anything about the goalie. If the goalie stick propels the puck into the net, that therefore it's no goal. It doesn't read that way. So basically, whoever was looking at this in Toronto interpreted the rule themselves, and this is what gets the NHL in trouble because they do this all the time with goaltender interference. People ask me all the time, what is goaltender interference? And I tell them, honestly, I have no effing idea what goaltender interference is in the NHL because it changes. Like one time there'll be you think it's going to be goalie interference and they rule a goal. The same exact scenario will happen and they flip it. So basically, I think they just take out a dice and roll it. And if it's an even, it's goaltender interference. If it's odd, then it's not. That's probably, I think, the way they go about goaltender interference anymore because I don't know. And this one didn't make any sense either to me. And after that, Winnipeg just it fell off for them the rest of the third period. Dallas scores two more goals. They end up winning that game 5-2. So they're up 2-1 in the series. I guess the good news is Connor Hallebuck played the whole entire game. He did not do that in any game in St. Louis on the road, but Winnipeg continues to struggle on the road. Dallas won the game in Winnipeg, which means that at some point in time, if Winnipeg wants to make the series again, they're going to have to win a game in Dallas. So we'll see where that goes from here. But I thought it was a weird goal to end up being the game winning goal, and kind of change the momentum of the game because Winnipeg just never recovered. And I don't know, maybe Dallas had all the energy. It wouldn't have mattered anyway with the way they scored the other two goals. But I think if that goal doesn't count, maybe it does change things. But we'll see. Again, the league does strange things at times when it matters most. So next one that we'll go over is Vegas and Edmonton. This series has lived up to everything that it was going to. Edmonton is up 2-1. This is another series where the road team has won every single game. They are 3-0. Edmonton has it's just so weird. Edmonton has trailed at some point in every game that they played in, and they had until game 3. They were on a 6-game winning streak of winning games that they had trailed in at some point in time. So just some real crazy stats coming out of here. They won game 1 4-2 coming from behind. Game 2 was an overtime winner by Leon Draisaitl off an amazing pass by McDavid after McDavid did this amazing move around Eichel. And Eichel's not a bad defensive forward. And he just basically undressed him at the blue line, goes in, they go on a 2-on-1, and it's a bang pass. And Draisaitl buries in the open net for the game 2 winner. That game was 5-4. Then Picard, which is the goalie for Edmonton, somehow got hurt during that game. He didn't leave that game, but he was not good for game 3. So Skinner goes back in goal and played okay. Gives up 4 goals. The game winner that is scored by Vegas is scored by Riley Smith with .04 seconds left. Yes, that is correct. .04. He kind of is coming around, and as you get towards the goal line, he keeps going further and further outside, which Skinner is pushing him outside. And a lot of people are like, well, why is he so far out the net? But when you really look at how much time was left, and I'm sure in the back of his head, Skinner's trying to count down whenever he last look at the clock. And his idea is he's forcing him wider and wider so that basically he's got no angle left at the net. And when Smith throws the puck on net, honestly, if it doesn't tip off of Leon Draisaitl's stick, which is in the crease, trying to probably move the puck out, instead it goes off a stick the wrong way. The puck probably just slides completely across the crease. If anything, maybe it hits the far goal post, but there's only .404 seconds left. So the chances of it actually still going into the net legally before that time would have hit 0 was probably slim and none if Draisaitl just doesn't touch the puck. But you're in the mode of trying to keep the puck from going out. You're not thinking that there's less than a second left. You have no idea when the horn's going to go off, and it just deflects off his stick the wrong way and goes into the net instead of out of the net. But probably a Draisaitl stick doesn't touch it. I don't know that it would have gone in. They would have gone overtime. So how does Edmonton respond tonight? Because their game 4 is tonight. How do they respond tonight from losing a game like that? Does this give Vegas the momentum that they need, or does Edmonton keep finding ways to win these games? So that should be a fun one tonight for sure. I'm looking forward to hopefully catching some of that. I do have a couple beer league playoff games that start at 7:30 tonight. So probably by the time I get out, maybe that one should just probably just be getting started. So we'll see how much of that I can stay awake for, if any of it. So we'll see how the beer leaguers behave tonight, because if they're unruly with the playoffs and the 7:30 start time, which means it's C League. And one thing about C League hockey players is if they got 7:30 start time, that means the entire family's got to come, and it's playoffs. So there's bound to be stupidity in the air tonight. I'm sure of it. This would be a good night, Midnight Rider, whenever you watch this, if it is on your betting line of me throwing somebody out tonight. Tonight, I would put the odds a little bit higher in your favor of somebody getting tossed tonight. But we'll save that for next show. We can go into that breakdown of that. But I'm looking forward to them, because these are my last two games, I think, for quite some time, and I'm looking forward to a break of being off the ice. But another fun series here: Toronto, Florida, tied at 2. This series has gone the other way, where every home team has won the game so far. In Toronto, Bob was not Bob. They lost the first game 5-4. During that game, Anthony Stolarz gets knocked out with a concussion. Toronto really mishandled this whole situation too. He first takes a 92-mile-per-hour slap shot off his head. The mask falls off, and he's shaking his head. It's clear to me that there was some type of concussion symptoms going on there, but the team ignores it. Then later on in the game, he gets a brush by Bennett, I think it was. Was it a penalty? Yes, it probably was interference, because the goalie's in the crease. You're not supposed to touch the goalie and when he's in the crease. Was it an outrageous elbow like everyone in Toronto wanted to make it out to be? No, it was not. I'm not even sure that the elbow really makes contact with the head. It looks kind of more like the forearm, but he was in the crease. It should have at least been an interference penalty, but I agree that there probably wasn't much to that afterwards. So that happens in game one. They have to bring in their backup goaltender, Woll, who's a good young goalie. He wins game 2, 4-3. And that one was another back and forth game where, again, Bob, the 4 goals he gave up, there's probably a couple of those that he wants to go. You would have loved to get back. Game 3, Toronto's actually scores the first 2 goals. They're up early, but Florida, comes back and they get that thing tied up. And then, of course, it goes to overtime. And who would score the overtime winner for Toronto other than the one and only Brad Marchand? He just loves to dig the needle into Toronto, and he did that in game 3. Game 4, Florida looked really, really good. The final score was 2-0. Bob made some big saves when he needed to in the third period. It's probably Florida's best looking game overall that they had. I really liked the game that they played. And then it ends with a little bit with Ty Domi. I can't remember the Florida player that he just absolutely pounded headfirst into the boards. I haven't seen yet if he's going to get suspended for that or not. But I would assume this series has had some of this type of physicality, which Florida seems to be always finding themselves in these mixes where it's either one of their players getting blasted or they're blasting somebody else. So game 5 in Toronto should be very, very interesting. I think now the Florida Panthers are awake. I thought the first 2 games I was a little concerned of how they looked. Now that Toronto crowd coming up in game 5 is going to be very, very nervous, and we'll see how that leads for them. I'm not honestly sure where that goes for this series. Tomorrow's game should be nothing but fun. Sarah puts in game 4 was Marchand's birthday. If I stand correct, yes, you are correct. There were lots of happy birthday banners out there yesterday for Marchand, which is kind of funny seeing Florida fans wishing Brad Marchand. I'm still not used to that because they hated him when he played for Boston, and now they all love him. But that just goes to show Brad Marchand is just like a Tom Wilson. You hate them when they are not on your team, but you love them when they are on your team. And with saying that, I think that is a perfect segue into the Tom Wilson series. Carolina and Washington is 2-1 right now. Carolina. The series is also the series is exactly what we thought it was going to be. You've had going into the series the 2 best goaltenders, Logan Thompson for the Caps and Freddie Anderson for Carolina. Both came in at 1 and 2 in save percentage and goals against average as far as for the playoffs coming into the series, and they've lived up to this. Really, there haven't been a lot of goals in this series to be had, not because the chances haven't been there. I just think both goaltenders have played really, really well. The interesting thing of all 3 games is there's no team has scored in the first period. I think honestly in games 1 and games 2, Carolina had the better of the play during those first 2 periods, where if you're a fan of Carolina, it's one of those periods where you're like, man, I really would have loved to at least gotten 1 goal out of that period, if not 2. And then instead you're sitting there at 0-0. In game 3, I think it was the opposite. I think Washington had by far the better chances of that game. And if you're a Caps fan, you would have been like, after that first period, like, man, I really would love to get at least a goal for sure, if not two there. But we'll backtrack a little bit in game one. Even though the Canes honestly dominated game one, the way the Canes play is very simple. They shoot the puck a lot. They don't necessarily care about quality. They are looking for quantity, and then they chase the said puck after it. They play a man-on-man style defenses as well. Not many teams play that, nor have the ability to play that. So what that means is that they are constantly pressuring the puck. Once they shoot the puck, they chase the puck, and if you don't get there first, then they start a cycle game with the puck, and then they'll shoot, and then they'll chase the puck, and then they keep making you have to play the puck quickly because guys are on you quicker than what you want. So your D has to get rid of the puck sooner. And a lot of times, sometimes it's also perception. They think they've got to get rid of it just because they're so used to having to get rid of the puck quickly. And that's the way that Carolina plays. And in game one, it worked to perfection. But after two periods, they do give up one little breakaway, and Washington buries it. They're up 1-0, and then finally one of these turnovers that is caused goes right to Stankoven out front of net. He buries it, and then in overtime, Jacob Slavin fires a shot from the point. It doesn't have a lot on it, but it had eyes. It went through traffic, and it gets underneath Logan Thompson, and Carolina wins game one 2-1. Probably, honestly, they deserve to win that game. They were the better team for sure. Vic puts in that they shoot the puck a lot, and he's correct that that's what they do. That's just how the Canes play. Game two, I think the Caps played a lot better, especially the first period. I still think the Canes kind of did what the Canes did in game one, but not quite to the extent that they did in game one. They get another breakaway goal on a kind of a weird fluky play that bounces off of Gosha Spare, goes to Connor McMichael. He buries it. They then get a power play goal on John Carlson. That was the first power play goal that Carolina had allowed in the entire playoffs. The Canes do get a power play goal back themselves later in the game to make it 2-1. But they just never really mustered any real great chances after that. And Tom Wilson, who by far was the best player in game two, wins it on an empty netter for 3-1. So they go back to Raleigh, tied at 1. And like I said, for the first period, I think honestly the Caps were the better of the teams. They dominated the first 20 minutes. They just didn't score. Wilson goes in a breakaway. Freddie makes a save. Ovi has a point blank chance right in front of the net, which he doesn't normally miss those. But Freddie gets across, makes a great save. One questionable non-call where Ovi gets a high stick in the corner by Burns. Probably honestly should have been called. Yeah, I think it should have been called. It definitely was a high stick. It got missed. But those are going to happen. And later in the game, Jordan Stahl high stick the player for Washington, even though it was actually Pierre-Luc Dubois that did the high stick. So those kind of calls to me washed out, where one was missed and one was called where it shouldn't have been called. It happens in the game. The big key in the second period, though, was the hit delivered by Jordan Martinook on Tom Wilson. Because I'll be honest with you, the Caps have done a very good job of, other than the first couple minutes, of quieting a very loud Raleigh crowd. They kept them out of the game for the most part until that hit. And when that hit happened, the crowd woke up. They buzzed around the play for a little bit. They caused an offensive zone faceoff. Sebastian Aho actually loses the faceoff, but Alexander Svechnikov goes in behind the Washington forwards, sneaks in, grabs the puck, makes a beautiful move, and then roosts it over Logan Thompson. And at that point in time, from that point on, the Canes got back to their game. The crowd, of course, was into the game. It was very loud. They scored yet another power play goal, so their power plays is now all of a sudden scoring goals, which is just weird. And they win the game 4-0. So I think if I'm a Caps fan, where I'd be a little bit concerned about, the last two goals at least were probably goals that I would call leaky goals on Logan Thompson. Did the Canes figure something out? Maybe, maybe not. Would I anticipate Logan Thompson to have a bounce back game tonight? Hell yes, I would if I was a Caps fan. So we'll see where that goes for the momentum. Does this maybe get into a goalie's head? Because we've seen that happen in a short series too, where you let in one or two bad ones, all of a sudden next game become 3, 4, 5. I don't anticipate that happening. He's never showed that. He's had a couple like this before during the regular season, and he has done that. So KG asked the big question: can the Caps pull this out? Absolutely. Can they pull it out? Sure. This is still anyone's series. I think tonight's game is obviously the big one, because if Carolina wins it, you're up 3-1. That's a far tougher hill to climb out of than it tied at 2. I wouldn't 100% anticipate that Washington is going to come out and play a full better game. But the key is, can they get past the Canes' pressure? And like I said, what the Canes do, and the first period they did, their D were calm with the puck. They would make the pass up, and then they were getting scoring chances from that. But the Canes can disrupt what you do so quickly, and once they get their game going, and if they're going on all cylinders, it can be tough to get scoring chances on, and that's been the problem so far for the Caps. I mean, game 1 they score a goal, they get shut out in game 3. Game 2 you have a power play goal and an empty netter goal for 2 of the 3 goals. So it's been a struggle for the Caps to score goals. Can they find it? Absolutely. I think, like I said, that the key is that they, for the most part, anytime that Ovi has been on the ice, Jacob Slavin has been on the ice against them, and this is what Jacob Slavin can do. It's something I mentioned on the Sunday show when I was on, that Jacob Slavin is one of those players that you're going to hate him by the end of the series. And it's not because he does anything dirty. It's just he constantly is there breaking up plays. And that's what he's been doing in all 3 games. So we'll see. I don't think, none of these games that the score might say 4-0. Oh, you think the Canes blew out the Caps? That really wasn't the case. It was a 2-0 game, into the third period. So then they just got a couple late ones to make it look worse than what the score actually was. So we'll see. I think tonight is the big game in this series. If you're a Caps fan, this is the game that you pretty much have to have. You know, and we'll see how it goes. I was a little concerned for the Canes because Martinook took a late puck in the upper knee area and didn't play the last 7 minutes, and Chatfield also didn't play the last 7 or 8 minutes, but both were in pregame warm today, and they look like they're both going to play tonight. So we'll see how that goes. Sarah says game 3 was the only game where it wasn't really close. Carolina ran with that one. Yeah, I mean, they did. Like I said, the final score is 4-0, but it was 0-0 after 1. I think it was 1-0 or 2-0 after 2. So the game was there. Sarah said, "Did they up?" Yeah. The both were in the pregame warm up. Freddie was not in the pregame warm up, but it seems like that was more just to give him extra rest. So I've not heard of any changes in Carolina's lineup for tonight, and no changes on Washington's side either. The key for Washington is Wilson and Ovechkin. Wilson's got going in game 2. As a Canes fan, I'm not even going to say it. Let's just wait to the end of the series about Ovi, because it is what it is right now, and I don't want to. I'm not putting anything out there on that front. We'll just have to wait and see how these things play out. So there you have it. These games, again, they're all going to be taking place. So tonight you got the Canes and Caps in their game 4, which should be a fun one. Then you have here. Hold on, I'm going to pull up the schedule here real quick, because I want to look at that. So you got that game for tonight. Then you also have the Knights and Oilers in game 4 tonight. Tomorrow, then it flip-flops. It's the Jets and Stars. They're the only game on Tuesday for some reason. Then Wednesday, you got the Panthers and Maple Leafs, and then and the Oilers and Knights in their game 5. And then Thursday is when they go back to Washington. So a couple days off after today too, which I'm sure is going to mean that any player that can play tonight is going to play, because you got 2 days off after this one. So we'll see where this all goes, but it's been fun. I think, I'm sure, like I said, the NHL would definitely love to have a Boston or New York Rangers, but there's been a lot of close games. I think last time I saw 85% of these games so far in the playoffs have been 1-goal games or a 2-goal game where the second goal was an empty net goal. So they haven't had a lot of big overtimes. There's been a lot of games that made it to single overtime, but we've yet to have, other than the 2 double overtimes, that's been it. So if you're looking for one of those double, triple, quadruple overtime games, haven't had one of those yet this year, but there's still time. But I don't think the NHL could ask for more. None of these series are sweeps. They're all were 2-1 at some point in time. No one even got to a 3-0 lead. And very possible after tonight that every series could be at 2-2, other than the Winnipeg and Jet series in their game 4s tomorrow night. So we'll see where these all go. But as you can see, we definitely got a lot to look forward to down the road here. Next week we've got, of course, we'll keep diving into with these playoff series where they're at. We'll see. Maybe we'll get lucky with the NBA getting into another round, where maybe we finally get some Osei Can You Sing entries on the NBA side. The Preakness is next weekend. The PJ Championship is next weekend as well. So there's lots of good, fun things to look forward to. I do want to dive real quickly into some baseball stuff too. I didn't put this on here, but I wasn't sure how quickly or unquickly I was going to ramble through everything that I had on here to put it on here. as we get obviously more into later part of May and June, I'm going to dive more into some of this baseball stuff that I want to. But I do want to point out, because again, the AL Central always seems to get a lot of shit talked about the AL Central being bad for some reason. And I get it. The Chicago White Sox are in this division. So you got a team that is bad like the White Sox, but it seems that everyone else is getting this bad rap. I'd like to point out for the record that the Detroit Tigers currently have the best record in baseball at 26-15. Hold on, it's raining and my window's open right here. So I'm going to real quickly shut this window, because I don't need to have any rain coming in. We're getting a nice little thunderstorm that's getting ready to roll through here. So anyway, the Tigers are 26-15. Here, Gertie, say hi to everyone. There, get your face in there. There she is. There's Gertie. Everyone say hi. See, this is the funny thing about this cat. I can do this to her. I can grab her head. I can squish her head, and she just stays here. She just shakes it off and wants more pets. This is what Gertie does. She's just like, oh, great, attention. Here, pet me. And she doesn't care. Like, you can squeeze her head. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't hiss at you. She just comes back for more. See, look, there she is. She's back for more. She's the strangest cat I've ever had. Anyway, Detroit 26-15. They are in first place with the best record in all of baseball. They're tied with the Mets technically, so they're tied for the best record in baseball. No, I'm sorry, the Dodgers are 27-14, but you get my point. They definitely have the best record in the American League. The Cleveland Guardians are second at 23-17, tied for the second best record in the American League. Right behind them is Kansas City at 24-18. Now, technically, they are percentage points behind the Yankees, who are 23-17. So your top three teams, basically in the American League, top 3 out of 4, are all in the AL Central. Minnesota, they, like I said, they started to play a little bit better. They are 21-20 right now as well. So I want to give some love to my AL Central. The Tigers are just a team to reckon with right now. They're getting good. They're getting good. I want to pull up some of their stats here. Who's doing really well for them, because now I draw. Margot is batting 316. Baez seems to have turned himself around a little bit. He's batting 300, which is good for them. Carpenter is batting 284. They've got guys up and down, but of course, where their team is made at is their pitching stats. And Skubal is off to a crazy great start again. He's got a 2.08 ERA through his first few starts. He's at 47 innings. Olson is right there with him at a 3.38 ERA. Mize is right there at a 2.53 ERA. So the Tigers are going to be tough to beat as they keep moving forward. That's a team, if you're in the AL, they're starting to figure out, and if they make a move and add another bat or two, look out. Vic puts Skubal is really good. Yeah, he is. He's just, I saw him unfortunately a lot last year in the playoffs. I didn't like seeing him as much as we did. July 4th, Rockies versus White Sox. True American baseball. Am I right? Yeah, let's see here. So that'll be the White Sox at 12-29 battling the 7-33 Colorado Rockies. That should be the ESPN game. Forget all these New York or against Boston games. Like, that's the game America wants to see, is the White Sox against the Rockies. So yeah, those two teams are just not good. So, but hey, the White Sox aren't the worst team in baseball right now. I also want to give a little shout out to the Oakland, or no, I'm sorry, they're no longer the Oakland A's, the Athletics. So we'll call them the Oakland, Sacramento, maybe soon to be Las Vegas. Also used to play in Philadelphia Athletics, whatever the hell we're calling them these days. They're 21-20. They're only 2 games out in the AL West. So that's kind of fun to see for them. Maybe Moneyball is back to working again. I don't know. We'll see how that all plays out. I think it'd be funny for MLB to have a team that is by choice is playing in a minor league stadium, make it to the playoffs, and them have to deal with that. So good luck with that. The Mets 26-15, they are rocking and rolling right where we thought they'd be. And same thing with the Dodgers 27-14. The Padres right behind them at 25-14. San Francisco 24-17. Arizona 21-20. So again, you got these two divisions where 4 teams are above 500, and they both have really, really bad 15 minutes. So we'll see where that all goes. But it's fun to look forward to. So again, as we keep moving here, we will definitely try to get more into into some baseball stuff for everyone. So, but with that being said, it is time for me to get off the exit ramp here. And it's going to be, it's like I said, we got a big week here coming up. We'll see what happens in these games tonight. I'm sure I'll try to jump on for a little bit tomorrow night and make some comments about what I see and try to help out anyone that's looking for some of those things to look for in these hockey games as far as some tips and stuff like that on it. So, but again, Sideline Junkies is definitely the place to be for anything that you want to see or hear. Tuesday night, of course, you got the Tuesday night fight. You got Thursday night showdown. You have in the passenger seat with Jack on Wednesday, Sunday morning rise, and then of course you got the WrestleManiacs on Saturday. So we appreciate everyone that does listen. As you see here, I put up here on the ticker a couple different ways that you can check us out. Like and subscribe to us, and then if you're subscribing, then you get the notifications whenever a show starts. And tell all your sports friends that we're here. The more that watch the show, I like it. And don't be afraid to, if you're watching the show after the fact, please put in some comments. I'd love to hear what you think about anything that I bring up on the show, and I'll try to look at it and make comments on it as well. So, but with that said, like I always say at the end of every show, make sure you hug your loved ones, tell them that you love them, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Hopefully you will all be here, and if so, then we will check you out next week on Drive Time with Matty Ice. And until then, take care, everyone, and be safe.